So hello and welcome to yet another episode of TopTenz. I am your interim host, Karl Smallwood, and today we're talking about 10 historical monsters you've probably never heard about. And this video is based on an original article by Jesse Clark. And while I'd hope it goes without saying, I never like to assume, and I should note that today's video delves into some pretty heavy and uncomfortable topics. So those of you with a nervous disposition, you have been forewarned about maybe giving this one a miss. For everybody else, let's get to it. So everyone's heard of Ghengis Khan, Adolf Hitler, Ted Bundy and Jeffrey Epstein, but sadly history is filled with mass murderers, psychopaths, child abusers, tyrants and dictators that you've probably never even heard of. Well, as delicious as it is to think of these power and fame hungry monsters dying in obscurity never to be remembered, undoubtedly a fate worse than death for some of them, it is important to learn from their crimes to make sure they can never be repeated. So with that in mind, let's take a look at some historical bad guys you've probably not heard of. Number 10, Elizabeth Bathory. The name Elizabeth Bathory probably means nothing to you, but it should evoke chilling tales of darkness and horror. Known as the Blood Countess, this 16th century Hungarian noblewoman killed a reported 600 girls and bathed in their blood to maintain her youth. It was one of the most sinister reigns of terror in human history. Or was it? Beneath the tales that have woven her into a monstrous figure, there lies a complex narrative. You see, new evidence suggests that her terrifying reputation was either a result of a conspiracy hatched against her by friends and family who sought to discredit her and steal her wealth and power, or that she really was a criminal, but that tales of her monstrous atrocities have been exaggerated to the point of absurdity over the centuries. You know, history isn't one to remember like minor crimes, as it were. Poor record keeping in her day certainly doesn't help us parse the truth from the fiction. But whether she was really guilty of these crimes or a victim of someone else's slander, it appears there is indeed a true villain somewhere in this story. Number 9, Sawney Bean. Legend has it that sometime in the 16th century, Sawney Bean and his family carved a gruesome path through the rugged Scottish countryside. Portrayed as a clan of cannibals and murderers, the Bean family is said to have lurked in the hidden caves, preying upon unsuspecting travellers for sustenance and pleasure. Their reign of terror and the sheer brutality of their crimes have immortalised the Bean clan of one of Scotland's most macabre characters. According to the law, the Beans, believed to number in the dozens, would ambush and rob unsuspecting passers-by before dragging them into their secret coastal cave hideout. There they would murder their victims, dismember the bodies and feast upon their flesh. The scale of the atrocities committed by the family is said to be staggering, with estimates claiming hundreds of innocent lives fell victim to the family's insatiable hunger. Now, as you probably guessed from the wording so far, there's a lot in this story that's probably made up, but true or not, the legend did inspire several works of art, including The Hills Have Eyes, so good luck sleeping tonight. Number 8, Gilles de Rais. If you ran into Gilles de Rais on the streets of 15th century France, you'd probably bow politely to this esteemed nobleman and military captain, but de Rais was hiding in plain sight like Heisenberg. Today, he's mostly remembered not for his valour on the battlefield, but his descent into the depths of depravity as an early serial killer. Once a trusted companion of no less an authority than Joan of Arc, de Rais' life took a harrowing turn following her execution. Fueled by a disturbing fascination with the occult and alchemy, he embarked on a series of unspeakable acts. He lured young boys to his castles, then indulged in acts of sadistic torture, sexual abuse, which we will not describe here, and ultimately murder. The magnitude of his crimes is staggering, with estimates ranging from dozens to hundreds of innocent lives lost at his hands. Thankfully, de Rais was eventually caught and forced to confess and brought to justice. Some modern historians do wonder if he was actually guilty or just telling his tormentors what he wanted to hear. Either way, it seems that an innocent person lost their lives. Number 7, Leopold II. When we think about vast European empires, you probably think Britain, Spain, France, and a few other power players. Belgium, on the other hand, is depicted as a teeny country that was often bullied by Germany. None of that is necessarily wrong, but Belgium's status as a cute waffle maker and blameless victim in the world wars has blinded the globe to its terrible crimes in Africa. Enter Leopold II, Belgian monarch from 1865 to 1909. While celebrated for some of his policies back home, his rule in the Congo Free State deserves no such praise. Under the guise of philanthropy and civilization, and hungry for lucrative rubber, Leopold II unleashed a reign of terror in the Congo, utilizing forced labor, enslavement, and rampant human rights abuses. Millions of Congolese people were subjected to horrific conditions, including frequent mutilations, mass killings, and other forms of terror and state-sanctioned violence. Sadly, the great European powers mentioned previously did still manage to exploit Belgium in one sinister way. Although they all copied Belgium's cruel, exploitative practices in Africa, they allowed Leopold to take the heat from the international community all by himself, since Belgium was too small to narratively defend itself. Number 6. Leonarda Cianciulli. Don't let the nickname the soap maker of Coraggio trick you into thinking that Leonarda, a seemingly bland 20th century Italian woman on the surface, was a sweet neighbourhood lady who just valued cleanliness. Behind her seemingly ordinary facade lurks a deeply disturbed mind, driven by a belief in the occult and a deranged quest for personal and familial protection. In an effort to protect her children from harm, Leonarda often lured unsuspecting women into her home, drugged them and then subsequently killed them with an axe. That's heinous enough on its own, but what followed was even more gruesome. Leonarda dismembered the bodies and boiled them piece by piece, transforming legs and heads into soap and tea cakes, hence the no longer very charming sounding nickname. Her grotesque acts were rooted in the belief that human sacrifices would shield her loved ones from misfortune. The revelation of Leonarda's horrific crimes sent shockwaves through the Italian populace. Fortunately, she was brought to justice, but not before destroying numerous lives and traumatising virtually the entire country. Number 5. Karl Panzram. You've probably heard of Ted Bundy, Ed Kemper and Jeffrey Dahmer, but Karl Panzram can hold his own in hell with any one of them. Born in 1891, Panzram led a life of crime from a very early age, but it wasn't until the man was behind bars that his true nature unravelled. After escaping, Panzram, now fully committed to a career of criminality, went on a heinous crime spree that involved burglary, arson, numerous sexual crimes and murder. He had several stints in jail but managed to escape each and every time, including one time where he simply soared through the window bars to his cell. At no point did Panzram ever attempt to lay low or become a productive member of society, or at least pretend to be one to avoid suspicion. When he was arrested once and for all, Panzram admitted to 21 murders and more than 1,000 acts of sexual abuse we will not be going into on here. He was ultimately hanged in 1930, and I do appreciate that the author didn't put too many details in there. Just on a personal note, I thank you for that. It was actually the criminal plots he never got around to pulling off, though, that raises the most eyebrows, including ones to poison an entire city's water supply and even to provoke war between Britain and the US by sinking a British ship in New York Harbour and blaming it on the American government. Number 4. Belle Gunness. We're all far more familiar with male serial killers, but, and this isn't what anyone thinks of when they push for gender equality, no doubt, it's worth noting that several women have lived lives of incredible violence and cruelty as well. Enter Belle Gunness, a cunning murderer in the 19th and 20th centuries who left a trail of death and mystery leading to a farm in LaPorte, Indiana. Gunness enjoyed luring wealthy bachelors to her farm where they would mysteriously vanish, never to be seen again. It's believed that she would first dispatch her victims through poison or blunt force trauma when that didn't get the job done. Then, to cover her tracks, she would dismember the bodies and dispose the remains on her ample property, leaving behind few traces of her heinous and villainous acts. Rumours swirled around Gunness and her farm for years as the disappearances of multiple suitors raised suspicions among the community. However, it was not until a fire engulfed her property that the true extent of her crimes came to light. Amidst the charred ruins of her home, authorities discovered the remains of several unidentified individuals, condemning Gunness and establishing her as one of the most notorious female serial killers of all time. Number 3. Oskar de Luanga. He might not be responsible for as many innocent deaths as Hitler or other members of the Nazi high command he served, but Oskar de Luanga, leader and namesake of the notorious SS de Luanga Brigade, committed some of World War II's most monstrous crimes. Operating with impunity, de Luanga and his unit of literal criminal psychopaths unleashed a reign of torture and terror that shocked even their comrades in the SS. That is, as sure as you can imagine, saying quite a bit. And if anyone wants to hear more about de Luanga, I did write an article for the site Today I Found Out, where you can see our previous and more aerodynamic host Simon Whistler go into more detail. Under de Luanga's command, the brigade perpetrated unspeakable acts of physical and sexual violence against civilians, prisoners of war and partisans. Their actions were fueled by a toxic combination of ideological fervour, a desire for personal gain, and especially, in this case of de Luanga, a sadistic pleasure derived from inflicting pain on innocents. De Luanga's atrocities peaked during the 1944's Warsaw Uprising, where his brigade was unleashed against resistance fighters. But it was innocent civilians, particularly children, who found themselves at the non-existent mercy of de Luanga's men. We won't go into details here about what happened. Again, thanks to the author for that one, but the information is out there if you have a strong stomach, and as someone who researched it personally for the aforementioned video, it's not pretty. One small ray of hope, though, is that de Luanga was tortured to death at the hands of vengeful Polish officers in 1945. So there's that at least. Number 2. Ilse Koch. Hitler, Himmler, Goebbels, Göring, de Luanga, all Nazis, all men. But the Third Reich wasn't entirely a man's world. Some women are unsung villains of Nazi Germany too. Enter Ilse Koch, for example. Infamously known as the Bitch of Buchenwald, she was one of the most sadistic concentration camp leaders in the Reich. As the wife of Karl Otto Koch, the commandant of the Buchenwald concentration camp, Koch was given oversight of the women's camp. Koch was known for her obsession with human skin, collecting tattoos and body parts from countless murdered inmates. Rumours swirled of her macabre decorations, including lampshades and book covers allegedly made from human leather. Beyond her gruesome collection, Koch would personally select victims for beatings, lashings, and even murder, based on the tiniest and most arbitrary provocations. Or not at all, because she was, as the name suggested, a bitch. After the liberation of Buchenwald, Koch was tried by an American military tribunal and ultimately found guilty of charges including, but not limited to, incitement of murder, cruelty, and the use of human remains for personal gain. She was initially sentenced to life imprisonment, but was, rather infuriatingly, released in 1949. However, she was given a life sentence in a separate trial regarding unrelated crimes. She died in prison in 1967. Number 1. Idi Amin. Now, we could fill a dozen of these lists with petty 2-bit third world dictators, but Idi Amin deserves special mention. Amin ruled Uganda with an iron fist from 1971 to 1979. And if you've ever learned about anyone on this list, chances are it was Amin, as is often the case with dictators, human rights abusers, mass killings and chilling terror were hallmarks and indeed staples of his regime. During his rule, Amin targeted various ethnic and political groups with arbitrary arrests, torture and extrajudicial killings, resulting in the deaths of hundreds of thousands of innocent Ugandans. The dichotomy featured by the flamboyant image he presented to the world and the vast suffering he was responsible for back home on his people is both bizarre and completely in line with what we come to expect from cruel leaders of banana republics and former democracies in the developing world. On one hand, it's a tragedy his crimes aren't more well known. On the other, we imagine he'd be furious if he knew how few people recognised his name. In the end, it's yet another cautionary tale about the importance of standing up to tyrants and protecting the rights of all people to choose their own government. We really shouldn't need this many, but here we are. If you found the video informative, you could like, comment, subscribe, and all that good stuff. Thank you as always for watching, and go and have the day you all deserve. Hug your loved ones and pet a dog.